We were lucky enough a few weeks ago to interview Robert Kirkman and David Finch, who did the book Skinbreaker for Skybound. And one of the things that Robert said during that interview that really struck me when I asked him about the state of indie comics was that a lot of people feel like indie comics are in a slump right now. And he didn't seem to be saying that from a perspective of not agreeing with it. It actually sort of seemed like that was a feeling he might have had as well. So my question is, as especially as a reader of indie comics, is that something that you're feeling? Are we in a space where indie comics are not as exciting as they used to be? And if we are, why?
You know, uh, I typically go for a new number 1 regardless of publisher. Maybe not regardless, but if there's a new one on the stands, I'll make the effort to try to read it, especially if it's a creator I haven't seen for a while. But I feel like what I've recently encountered has been a continual cycle of the creators that I know, not necessarily or not always the influx of new talent in, and the focus of publishers like a Dark Horse, like an Image, like a Skybound, uh, IDW, not necessarily in indie as much as they have in licensing. That's been the explosion, which in my mind has taken away from the space to be able to publish indie comics, taken from that market share. So I think I would agree that there's a slump. There's definitely, they still are there, but I feel like the 2011 explosion of Image, there's a new number 1 coming out every week from Image itself. Not continuous runs, not long-standing runs, but brand new number 1s.
And now all your brand new number ones are like Herculoids and Thundercats and Powerpuff Girls and
Yep.
Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends comic that has not been announced yet, but I guarantee you something like that would be announced. Do you know what I mean? Like that's where your number ones are. Whereas I think it's a little more few and far between at like a big one like Image.
A
Um,
big one, right?
well, I think the most recent like big one that wasn't part of Skybound or Ghost Machine was probably Power Fantasy, Gillen and Casper
Mm.
Wingard, which I think was a big deal, especially it was Gillen's book coming out after his run on X-Men, explicitly using some of the ideas that he wanted to use within that run in a more creator-owned focused thing. Um, so I think like that was big, but like we were getting those every month back in the 2010s. I think the thing though back then was that everyone saw an opportunity. And it was still a bit of an unknown. It was like, oh, there's an opportunity not just in comics, but it's an opportunity in TV and film, where a lot of the big companies were looking for IP in those realms. So I think it was like a good idea for people to be like, all right, let me put out some really good stuff here, and maybe that can be even picked up for an adaptation along the line. Render did it with Deadly Class. We had Bendis's Powers as a TV show on the PlayStation Network, right?
Yep.
Um, so there was just a lot of opportunity there that I think is a little more understood to be a little more limited now.
I think that there are a few factors that must be talked about when we're having this conversation. The first factor is that when Image had their boom in the early 2010s, that was also the first time that many comics readers who had gotten into comics in the 2000s had been exposed to the idea that there could be
Mm.
really good comics that were not from Marvel and DC. And a big part of the reason why is the second thing that we have to talk about, which is the fact that that happening was juxtaposed with a massive exodus from Marvel Comics. Marvel lost Rick Remender, Matt Fraction, Ed Brubaker, um, Kelly Sudaconic was lost for a little bit. Like so many, Marjorie Liu, so many of those people, Brian K. Vaughan, they went on. Every person I just named went on to go and do something very successful at Image.
and that was when Marvel and the big two were making names out of their creators, which was a response to the original Image Comics boom. um, so now I don't think the big two make creators like they have been in the early 2010s. We knew who all those names were, and they would even put them in the comics. They put a picture. Remember those black and white images that DC used to put out in the book itself, showcasing like Snyder, and they were showcasing Capullo. Um, they were known people. Not so much anymore. So I think it's a little harder when the big company isn't really helping build you as a brand to then decide, well, let me spin off and do my own thing now that people know who I am.
I don't know, dude. I look at that period and those writers and artists were just that damn good. I don't think if you had I don't think that there is an equivalent centralized level of creative quality at Marvel like there was at that point. I don't think if you took the top 5 names at Marvel and said, okay, they're gonna do image books right now, that it would suddenly lead to a massive boom in people's care about those books.
I'm saying it could be both. There was push by the companies to make names out of their creators, and the creators were good. There was the whole architects thing. There was, we did what Marvel does a little bit with the Stormbreakers, but that's like an only online thing, as far as I know.
I think they made the names for themselves because Marvel and DC have the reach, but their work was what kind of solidified it for themselves. And then they took advantage of that. One, the recognition, and then two, the fact that they were talented and shifted that over. I think that's a good call that we haven't had the same kind of talent shift into the indie space. And I would argue that shift has gone into the licensing space. That's where a lot of uh, outside of a ghost machine, which is kind of being built from the ground up with a number of highly successful creators. Uh, they've been acquired with uh, paychecks that will allow them in the future to do something, but for the moment they're locked in to put out books like a Energon, like from the Energon universe, for example, a bad TMNT. What is it? The biker mice from Mars.
Yeah.
Like
So
those
one
things.
way to get Sean to pop.
But those are the things that are coming back, and I feel like those are the things that want to have top talent so they can make a name for themselves within comics. Not the writers or creators or the artists, but for the brand itself to establish itself.
But also as a creative, it's more like safe.
Yeah.
You know, it has an established property. You probably want to write Space Ghost, or as opposed to taking a risk where you have to do a lot of the work, and who knows how much money you're going to get out of it from a creator owned at this point. I think, especially in the economy we're in currently, maybe the safe work is the way to go right now. Maybe the work that's a little more less risky is the way to go.
I feel like we've definitely seen, I would say ever since Scott Snyder did Scott Tober and then like shifted back over to doing DC stuff, like it definitely feels like he may have been, I'm certainly not speaking for him, I don't know anything, but he may have been reading the tea leaves a little bit. um James Tynion has been the anointed king of the indie comic space for a few years now, where the idea has been that anything he launches will catch fire. And without sales figures, it's really hard to know if that's still true. Exquisite Corpses was the last big release from him, and that was obviously a massive cast of creators, and that was just a few months ago. Um, but it doesn't feel like there is a fervor for big indie books right now. And it doesn't feel like there are any talent stepping into that space to say, okay, I'm going to do something crazy. I'm going to do something massive.
Yeah. The must read factor for some of the books that get published are there. And I think actually it's a positive symptom of the good eats that we're getting from the big two currently. And I would say things like Ultimate, things like Absolute, and then the cohesiveness of the DC universe at large, I think, is driving some of that. The the dollars for these books are the cost is only going up. And so you have to make really hard considerations. And if I know I'm eating good in Marvel or in DC, it's hard for me, or Ghost Machine or Energon, it's hard for me to explore past that because I can't risk it the same way. I think there's always a level of inherent risk with an indie book that is hard to try to rationalize when you only have like $50 in your pocket.
Not to mention the volatility of what comics is right now in terms of the physical space.
Hmm.
Like, why put out my magnum opus indie comic when Diamond's under right now? So I don't really know on the grand scheme of things how I'm going to get that book out. If even an Image will I be able to do that? Um, then you have the whole tariffs of it all, which is a little more set in stone in terms of the comic sphere right now, but it wasn't, for months. And even then, that could, turn on a switch. So I think there's just a lot of things in the air in terms of comics and as a medium that's maybe it's like, let me put the brakes on it right now. Let me take the safe route, do my I don't know, fifth Red Sonja miniseries, and then once things, because there will be a boom again, there always is. Once there is another one, learn to catch that wave because right now the tide's coming out.
I also think at that point in time, it was really only Image.
Yeah.
Boom had a handful, like I remember Day Tripper, I think it was, which I really enjoyed, but there were a handful of things that were coming from different publishers that were cool. But when you were talking about the biggest, most exciting comics in comics, you were really talking about Image. So there was an awareness factor there too. Whereas now, maybe that back then you were just checking for anything Image. Now it's like, where do you look?
Yeah.
Boom, Image, still there. IDW, Dark Horse, Ghost Machine, which is Image, but Skybound. You have AWA. There are all these
Yeah.
publishers. What's the one?
Mad Cave?
Not Mad Cave. Distillery.
Oh, your favorite.
But also Mad Cave. Like there are so many publishers who are putting out, I would say most of the books I read or encounter are somewhere between solid and good.
Yeah.
I only have so many dollars. What are you supposed to do?
I guess it makes it hard too when the big two are doing good, and in an economy where people have to be selective about what they buy. Again, maybe not the right time to do your magnum opus. And I think that's okay.
Yeah.
Because it's a creative field. Those books will come out and people will make those books. It just might not be right now.
Yeah, you can always just have it ready, have it at the ready. There's you can always have your Kickstarter space, which maybe is another thing in of itself, where there's such a not a saturation, but such a range there that you could also uh, come across. Hey, I can only sponsor so many campaigns.
Yeah.
I think that's the one of the big issues is the disposable income for comics in general has fallen as prices have gone up, and market conditions and market quality is good. You can't compete with that.
But Marco, I got this really cool Machismo Buffman comic that you can get one issue for. That's 48 pages for $15 on my Kickstarter.
Oh, only if you have a big titty cover.
I'll get my guys on it. Yeah.
Easy. Sold.
I know a friend who just got canceled on Twitter. We can get him on the cover right now.
Nice. Yeah, I think that the Image boom was a lot of factors that came together, like a perfect storm type of situation. And I just don't know that is what's on the horizon. And so it'll be really interesting to see in the next few years, are top level creators, like what's Dennis Camp's profile in 3 to 5 years? Does he leave? Does he go do something? Rob V is super talented. He still plays in the DC sandbox. So the only place you can see Rom is not Image the way it used to be. Like not with Rom, but like in 2012, from 2012 or whenever the fuck it was that Rick Remender left Marvel, onward, the only place you can get a Rick Remender book is Image, Giant Generator. You know what I mean? That's not the case with almost anybody who's not at Ghost Machine or named Robert Kirk.
Even thinking like Tinian with the Tiny Onion,
Yeah, him too. Yeah,
but like Exquisite Corpses, that's Tiny Onion, I believe, right?
it's
But
through
it's
Image, but yeah,
not
Right.
fully him. And his previous big book that was huge wasn't Tiny Onion. It went straight to Vertigo once DC brought Vertigo back. And Tinion's coming back to write a superhero story in one of the crossover books. So like even him who launched this big thing that had like a backing too with like I believe
An
like
investor.
first looks in terms of
Yeah.
scripts. Even that not fully putting all his eggs in one basket. And that's probably the top creator who could have done it at the time. Still not even doing it.
But to that, that's a good point from the publisher side. The publisher side doesn't have their eggs all in one basket as it used to. It used to be all creator owned, all creator focused. Now it is
Sure.
the Tiny Indian stuff. Now it is Ghost Machine. Now it is Skybound, right? So the diversification there is no longer, or there is only diversification now. There is no longer just the focus on creator, and I think that's happening with all of the publishers. They're realizing that that's a risk.
see, and I think that I guess in a weird way, I almost wish it wasn't like that as much because I feel like every single new Image launch was something you couldn't necessarily predict. And I know people have made a lot of jokes about like Sci-Fi Plus, and that's what it became. But now it's like, hey, we're all at Ghost Machine. You can generally understand what that means. You know exactly who's going to be doing those books. You generally know what they're going to look like. And I love them, but I wish that there was still that element of like, you just don't know what's coming and from who.
And it would build big names too, that would be able to take the coattails of the huge names, like smaller names, and then make something out of themselves.
Huh. Who did that happen for? I'm trying to think.
I mean,
I can't think of anybody whose name was built off that era.
there were some, but like
Writer-wise.
they didn't last.
I mean, Fiona Staples, like off the back of Saga, and then she
What's
got
she doing?
Archie. She's not doing much more, right?
Well,
She
not
got
in comics, at least.
She got Archie, and then she got covers for like the Vikings or something like that.
And she's still doing Saga somehow.
Right, yeah.
It's still good, guys. Trust me.
Dude, I have to catch up.
But seriously though, like I don't think that made any new stars in comics.
I could think of the books. I can't think of the creatives on them. I think that's an issue. Like there
No.
are things like remember Copper that came out around
Copperhead?
then? It was a Copperhead. Oh God! All right, I might just be debunking my own theory here.
Maybe you could say, ooh, I don't even know if he counts. Daniel Warren Johnson. I don't know if he was. I think he might have been a little after that.
Well,
That's a little after. Yeah.
After, because Murder Falcon was 2017, 2016?
Even that Extremity was before it.
Oh,
Yeah.
true.
I think that era built no stars, but it did launch careers that may or may not still be going on. But I don't think that it did anything to elevate the profile significantly of anyone whose name we didn't already know, at least from a writer standpoint. Because I really do believe the Image revolution of the 10s was a writer's revolution, whereas the 90s one was an artist revolution. Very different.
Did great things for TV, though.
That is true. That is true. Well, look, all this said, indie comics are still pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And that really is the bottom line. Whether or not they're in a slump in terms of interest, the stories are still strong. We're still seeing new, fresh, interesting ideas. And you never know when that next boom period is around the corner. All it really takes is one or two creative teams to throw dynamite out there, and then everybody's ready to launch. It's kind of like a nuclear option. Once one nuke is out, it's all out. So let us know. Maybe we're missing some books. Talk to us about the books we might be missing in the indie space. And you know what? Before we close out, why don't we all throw out one book we want to just quickly just say the name of, and we'll cut out of here. Beneath the Trees, Rite of Spring. I'm loving it.
Oh, I caught up on that too. It's good. Oh, geez. Ghost Pepper from Image Comics. Fun little 2 issues so far in the book. Good stuff.
Palo Verde. It's a Ray Fox book. Mad Cave.
That's one of those like deep in League of Comics comics.
Deep,
Yeah.
deep Leaking Comics geeks. Yeah, but I've been enjoying it.
Awesome. Hey, we gave you some recommendations. Leave us some in the comments below. We'll see you in the next one. Take care.